The human tried meditation. The cubs thought it was a combat stance. The observation deck of Unity Horizon Station was quiet. Stars stretched across the massive window like scattered diamonds on black cloth. Daewon stood there for a moment, looking out at the emptiness of space. His shoulders ached. His head hurt. The day had been long and frustrating. He was a cultural exchange officer. That was his official title. In reality, he spent most of his time trying to stop two species from insulting each other. Humans and Meralki. The Meralki were cat-like aliens, but calling them that to their faces was a bad idea. They were warriors, proud, strong, and they thought humans were weak. Daewon had been on Unity Horizon for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of tension. 3 weeks of watching young Meralki cubs mock his fellow crew members. 3 weeks of biting his tongue and staying diplomatic. Today had been the worst. A Meralki cub named Ven had challenged a human engineer to a strength contest. The engineer, a kind woman named Park, had politely declined. Ven took that as proof of human cowardice. He laughed. His friends laughed. Even some of the adult Meralki smiled. Daewon had intervened, of course. He explained that humans valued intelligence over physical strength, that different cultures had different values. Ven had looked at him with golden eyes full of contempt and walked away. The message was clear. Words meant nothing without strength to back them up. Now, alone on the observation deck, Daewon needed to center himself. He found a clear spot on the floor, away from the windows. He sat down cross-legged. His knees protested a bit. He was not as young as he used to be. Mid-30s now, with a military past he tried not to think about too much. He closed his eyes. Breathed in slowly through his nose. Counted to 4, held it. Counted to 4 again. Breathed out through his mouth. Counted to 4. This was his routine. Every day, usually twice a day. Meditation had saved his life after the war. After the things he had seen and done, his therapist back on Earth had taught him this. You cannot change the past, she had said, but you can change how it affects your present. So he practiced. Every day, without fail. Daewon straightened his spine, relaxed his shoulders, let his hands rest on his knees. He focused on his breathing. In, hold, out. In, hold, out. The ache in his head began to fade. The tension in his shoulders loosened. He heard the door to the observation deck slide open. Footsteps, light ones. He did not react. He had learned to maintain his meditation even with distractions. The footsteps stopped. Whispers. Young voices speaking in the Meralki language. Daewon continued breathing. In, hold, out. The voices went silent. He felt eyes on him. Many eyes. He did not open his own eyes. That was not the point. The point was to find calm, to find center, to remember that he was more than his anger and frustration. The whispers started again. More urgent now. Then the footsteps retreated quickly. The door slid shut. Silence returned. Daewon continued his meditation for another 20 minutes. When he finally opened his eyes, the observation deck was empty. He stood slowly, stretching his legs. He felt better, calmer, ready to face another day of cultural misunderstandings. He had no idea what had just happened. Across the station, in the Meralki youth quarters, 3 cubs sat in a circle. Silka, Tor, and Ven. They were breathing hard. Their eyes were wide. Their fur stood on end. Did you see that? Silka asked. She was the boldest of the 3, with gray fur and white markings around her eyes. The way he sat, the way he breathed. The silent hunter stance, Tor whispered. He was smaller than the others, with brown fur and nervous energy. My grandfather told me stories. I thought they were just legends. What are you talking about? Ven demanded. He was the largest, orange-furred and aggressive. It was just the human sitting down. Probably resting. They are weak. They rest a lot. No, Silka said firmly. Watch. She tried to mimic Daewon's position. She sat cross-legged, closed her eyes, but her tail twitched. Her ears turned toward every sound. Her muscles tensed. I cannot do it. I cannot stay still like that. Because you are not trained, Tor said. His voice carried awe. The silent hunter stance requires perfect balance, perfect breath control, perfect awareness. Our ancestors practiced it thousands of years ago. before we learned modern combat techniques. Why did we stop? Silka asked. Because it was too hard, Tor explained. It required too much mental discipline, too much patience. Warriors wanted faster results, so they abandoned the old ways, Ven snorted. You are saying that weak human knows techniques our warrior ancestors could not master? Impossible. Then explain what we saw, Silka challenged. Explain his breathing. Every breath was exactly the same length, exactly the same depth. That is oxygen control for extended combat. Explain his stillness. He did not move even when we entered. That is predator awareness. He knew we were there but did not consider us threats. He was just sitting, Ven insisted. His spine was perfectly straight, Tor added. His hands were positioned for balance and quick movement. His center of gravity was perfectly distributed. That is not just sitting. That is a combat stance disguised as rest. Ven's tail lashed in confusion. But why would he practice combat techniques here? On a peace station? Maybe, Silka said slowly. Humans are not as weak as we thought. Maybe they hide their warrior nature behind words and diplomacy. The three cubs looked at each other. The idea was disturbing, exciting, terrifying. They had been on Unity Horizon for 2 months as part of their training. They were learning about other species before they became full warriors. So far, they had been disappointed by humans. Humans were small, soft. They had no claws, no natural weapons. They talked too much and fought too little. But if humans possessed ancient warrior techniques that even the Meralki had forgotten, that changed everything. We need to observe him more, Silka decided. We need to know if this was luck or skill. We should tell Commander Ravik, Tor suggested. No, Ven said quickly. He will mock us. He already thinks we waste time bothering the humans. We need proof first. The other two considered this. Ven was right. Ravik was the senior Meralki warrior on the station. He was old, scarred, and traditional. He barely tolerated the human presence. If they came to him with wild theories based on watching a human sit quietly, he would dismiss them. Then we watch, Silka agreed. We learn, and if the human truly knows the silent hunter stance, we will have discovered something important, something that could change how our people see humans. The three cubs made a pact. They would observe Daiwan. They would record his practices. They would analyze every detail. And they would prove that humans were not the weak prey species everyone believed them to be. Meanwhile, in the human section of the station, Hana was reviewing her research notes. She was a xenobiologist fascinated by alien cultures. The Meralki particularly interested her. They were complex, contradictory. They valued honor but practiced deception in combat. They respected strength but feared showing weakness. Her workstation chimed. A message from Day One. Meditation helped. Feeling better. Thanks for listening earlier. Hana smiled and typed back. Good, you needed it. These cats are testing everyone's patience. She meant it as a joke, but there was truth in it. The Meralki cubs were difficult. They challenged humans constantly, tested boundaries, pushed limits. It was exhausting, but it was also their culture. Young Meralki proved themselves through challenge and confrontation. Understanding them was the key to peace. Hana believed that. Day One believed that. Most of the human crew believed that. But belief did not make the daily reality easier. Hana closed her notes and decided to get some rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new misunderstandings, new opportunities to build bridges between species. She had no idea that those bridges were being built in unexpected ways. She had no idea that 3 young Meralki were beginning to see humans through new eyes. She had no idea that a simple meditation practice was about to change everything. The station continued its orbit around the neutral moon. Inside, 2 species coexisted in careful tension. Outside, the stars watched in silence, and somewhere between peace and conflict, understanding waited to be discovered. The next morning, Day One woke early. He always did. Old military habits never really left. He dressed in his standard uniform, a simple gray jumpsuit with the Unity Horizon patch on the shoulder. He made himself tea, green tea from Earth, one of the few luxuries he allowed himself. The station was quiet at this hour. Most of the crew was still sleeping. Day One liked it this way, peaceful, calm. He took his tea to the observation deck, his favorite spot. He found the same place where he had meditated the night before and sat down. He placed his tea beside him, closed his eyes. began his breathing. In, hold out, in, hold out. What Daewon did not know was that 3 pairs of eyes were watching him from the shadows near the door. Silka, Tor, and Ven had set their alarms early. They had positioned themselves to observe without being seen. They had even brought a recording device. Look at his breathing, Tor whispered. His voice was barely audible. Count the seconds. Silka counted silently. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds hold. 4 seconds out. Every single breath. Exactly the same. That is not natural, she said. That is training. Maybe humans just breathe weird, Ven suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. They watched for 30 minutes. Daewon did not move, did not open his eyes. His spine remained straight. His hands remained still on his knees. The only movement was the slow rise and fall of his chest. How does he do it? Silka wondered. My legs would cramp. My tail would twitch. My ears would move to track sounds. That is why it is advanced training, Tor said. He has mastered his body completely. Every muscle under perfect control. When Daewon finally opened his eyes, the cubs had already left. They did not want to risk being discovered. They returned to their quarters and reviewed the recording. Frame by frame, second by second there, Silka pointed at the screen. See how he places his hands? That specific position. My combat instructor uses that position when teaching defensive stances. And his back, Ven added reluctantly. He was starting to believe despite himself. Warriors are taught to keep their spine straight during combat. It helps with balance and quick movement in any direction. Over the next week, the cubs observed Daewon every day. They learned his schedule. Morning meditation, evening meditation, sometimes a quick session during lunch. They documented everything. And with each observation, they became more convinced. The cubs were not quiet about their discovery. They told other young Meralki on the station. Soon a dozen cubs were interested. Some were skeptical, others were curious. But all of them wanted to see for themselves. The word spread. Quietly at first, then more openly. Young Meralki began to look at Daewon differently. When he walked through the corridors, they watched him. When he spoke, they listened. The mocking had stopped. The challenges had ended. Hana noticed the change first. She was in the cafeteria getting lunch when she saw it. Daewon walked in. 3 Meralki cubs stood against the wall. They did not laugh. Did not whisper insults. Instead, they stood straighter. They watched him with what looked like respect. That is weird, Hana muttered to herself. She found Daewon sitting at a table eating his meal quietly. She joined him. Have you noticed the cubs acting strange? She asked. Daewon looked up. Strange how? They are watching you. All the time. And they are not being hostile anymore. Daewon shrugged. Maybe they got bored with harassing us. Maybe they finally learned some manners. Or maybe something else is going on, Hana said. She was a scientist. She noticed patterns. And this pattern did not make sense. Meralki cubs did not just stop being aggressive. Not without reason, she decided to investigate. That evening, she approached Tor in one of the common areas. Tor was the smallest of the 3 main cubs. The least aggressive, the most likely to talk. Can I ask you something? Hana said, sitting down near him. Tor's ears flicked toward her. His tail curled defensively. What? Why are you and your friends watching Daewon? Tor's eyes widened. His fur rippled. We are not watching anyone. I have seen you, Hana said gently. It is okay. I am just curious. Did he do something to earn your respect? Tor hesitated. He looked around to make sure no adults were nearby. Then he leaned closer. You work with Daewon. You must know about his training. His training? Hana was confused. The silent hunter stance, Tor whispered. The breathing techniques. The perfect stillness. The combat meditation. Hana stared at him. The what? But Tor had already said too much. He stood quickly and walked away, leaving Hana completely baffled. Combat meditation? Silent hunter stance? What was Tor talking about? Hana found Daewon that evening. He was in his quarters reading a book on his tablet. She knocked on his door. He let her in. We need to talk, she said. About what? About your combat meditation. Daewon blinked. My what? Hana explained what Tor had said. As she spoke, she watched Daewon's expression change from confusion to disbelief to something like horrified amusement. They think my meditation is combat training? He asked, apparently. Something called the silent hunter stance. Daewon started laughing. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came when something was so absurd you could not process it any other way. Oh no, this is bad. Why is it bad? Hana asked. Because it is a misunderstanding. A big one. I meditate for my mental health. For peace, for calm. It has nothing to do with combat. But they think it does, Hana said. And they have been watching you. Recording you. Analyzing every detail. They think you are some kind of hidden warrior. Daewon put his head in his hands. This explained so much. The staring. The respect. I thought they had finally matured a little. What do we do? Hana asked. We tell them the truth, Daewon said immediately. We explain what meditation actually is. We clear this up before it gets worse. Or, Hana said slowly, we wait. Wait. Why? Think about it. For the first time since we arrived, the cubs are treating humans with respect. They are not challenging us, not mocking us. They are actually learning something from watching you, even if they misunderstand what it is. Learning what? How to sit still. Discipline, Hana said. First, patience, those are good things. And if we tell them the truth now, that respect disappears. They go back to seeing us as weak. Maybe this misunderstanding is actually helping. Daewon shook his head. Building relationships on lies is wrong. Even accidental lies, it is not a lie. You are meditating. You are just not calling it combat training. If they want to interpret it that way, is that really our problem? Yes, Daewon said firmly. Because when they find out the truth, and they will feel deceived. That will make things worse, not better. The two humans argued for an hour. Hana wanted to let the misunderstanding continue. Daewon wanted to correct it immediately. They finally agreed to wait one more day and think about the best approach. But the next day, the situation escalated beyond their control. Daewon was in the cafeteria during lunch. It was crowded. Humans and Meralki eating together, though mostly at separate tables. The room buzzed with conversation. Silka approached Daewon's table. She moved confidently, her gray fur gleaming under the lights. Other cubs watched from nearby tables. Even some adult Meralki turned to look. Daewon noticed her approach. He smiled politely. Hello, Silka, can I help you? Silka picked up a cup of water from the serving area. She walked past Daewon's table. Then, as if by accident, she bumped into the table. The cup tipped. Water spilled toward Daewon. In Meralki culture, this was a test. A minor challenge. A trained warrior would react instantly, moving to avoid the water, ready for a possible attack. It was a way to measure someone's reflexes and awareness. But Daewon was thinking about the meditation misunderstanding. He was distracted considering how to address it. He barely noticed the water. He looked up, saw Silka standing there with an empty cup, and smiled. Accidents happen, he said calmly. He reached for napkins and started cleaning the water. He even handed Silka a napkin. Here, you got some on your hand. Silka stood frozen. She had expected a reaction, a flinch, a defensive movement. Something. Instead, the human had not reacted at all. He had simply accepted the water and cleaned it up. No anger, no challenge, no response. To Silka and the watching cubs, this meant only one thing. Daewon's awareness was so advanced that he had detected the attack instantly, evaluated it as harmless, and dismissed it. That level of control was beyond anything they had seen. Silka took the napkin with shaking hands. She bowed slightly, a gesture of respect among Meralki. Then she walked away quickly. The cubs at the other tables whispered excitedly. Ven looked impressed despite himself. Tor nodded as if his theories had been confirmed. Across the cafeteria, watching from the staff section, was Commander Ravik. He was an old Meralki warrior. His orange fur was streaked with gray, scars crossed his face and arms. He had fought in more battles than most of the cubs had lived days. He had seen the entire exchange. He had seen Silka's test. He had seen Daewon's non-reaction, and unlike the cubs, he knew enough about combat to find that non-reaction disturbing. A true warrior sensed danger and responded appropriately. But a master warrior sensed danger and chose not to respond. That was dominance. That was confidence. That was the behavior of someone who feared nothing because they could handle anything. Ravik had been on Unity Horizon for 3 months. He had dismissed humans as weak. The cubs were trying to meditate. It was not going well. Silka sat cross-legged in the Meralki youth quarters. Her eyes were closed. Her hands rested on her knees. She was trying to copy Daewon's exact position, but her tail would not stop moving. It swished back and forth, betraying her frustration. "Stay still," Tor hissed. He was sitting nearby, also attempting the position. His own tail was wrapped tightly around his body, but his ears kept swiveling toward every sound in the corridor outside. "I am trying," Silka growled. "This is impossible." Ven had given up entirely. He lay on his back on a sleeping pad, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe we are doing it wrong. Maybe there is a technique we are missing. Or maybe," Silka said, opening her eyes, "humans are just better at this than we are." The admission hurt. Meralki prided themselves on physical superiority. They were faster, stronger, had better reflexes than most species. But this sitting still business? This controlled breathing? It was torture. "My grandfather said the old warriors trained for years to master the silent hunter stance," Tor said. "We have been trying for 3 days. We cannot expect to match someone who has clearly trained for a long time." "How long do you think Daewon has trained?" Ven asked. "Years, maybe decades. He is probably a master." The 3 cubs sat in silence, contemplating this. Then Silka made a decision. "We should ask him to teach us." "What?" Tor's ears flattened. "We cannot do that." "Why not?" "Because asking for training is admitting weakness. It is asking a human to teach us something." "How would that look?" "It would look like we are smart enough to learn from those who know more than us," Silka said. "My mother always says that pride that prevents learning is false pride. True warriors learn from everyone." Ven sat up. "Your mother is a general. She can say things like that. We are just cubs. If we ask a human to train us, the other cubs will mock us. The adults will question our loyalty. Then we do not ask directly," Silka said. "We challenge him publicly, a meditation duel. When he wins, which he will, we ask him to explain his technique. That way it looks like we are seeking knowledge from a superior, not weakness." The other 2 considered this. It was clever. A challenge was acceptable. Learning from someone who defeated you was honorable. It could work. "When?" Tor asked. "Tomorrow. The cafeteria during lunch. Everyone will see." They spent the rest of the day spreading word of the challenge. By the next morning, every cub on the station knew. Even some of the adults had heard. There was excitement in the air. A meditation duel was unusual, but not unheard of in Meralki culture. It was a test of mental discipline, patience, and control. What made this different was that a human was involved. Hana heard about it from another human crew member. She immediately went looking for Daewon. She found him in the engineering section, consulting with a technician about some cultural protocols. "We have a problem," Hana said, pulling him aside. "Another one? Tor challenged you to a meditation duel, publicly. It is happening at lunch in the cafeteria." Daewon closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Not a meditative breath, just a tired breath. "Of course he did." "You have to refuse," Hana said. "I cannot refuse." You know, Meralki culture. Refusing a public challenge looks like cowardice. But accepting it means continuing this misunderstanding. They will see you meditate, think you are demonstrating combat techniques, and the whole thing gets worse. Or, Daewon said slowly, "I accept the challenge. They see that meditation is just sitting quietly, and they realize there is nothing mystical or combative about it. Maybe this is how we clear up the confusion." "You really think that will work?" "No idea, but I cannot refuse. That would destroy any respect we have built. At least this way we control the situation." Hana wanted to argue more, but she knew he was right. In Meralki culture, refusing a challenge was shameful. Daewon had to accept. Lunchtime arrived. The cafeteria was packed. It seemed like every crew member on the station, both human and Meralki, had heard about the challenge. They crowded into the large room. Tables were pushed aside to create an open space in the center. Tor stood in the center, looking nervous but determined. His brown fur was neatly groomed. His stance was formal. Around him, other cubs watched with excitement. Adult Meralki watched with curiosity. The human crew watched with confusion and concern. Daewon entered the cafeteria. The room went quiet. He walked calmly to the center and faced Tor. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. Tor returned the bow. "The challenge is simple," Tor announced loudly. "We both sit in meditation position. Whoever breaks position first loses. We test mental discipline and focus." "I accept," Daewon said simply. They sat down, facing each other. The crowd formed a circle around them. Hana stood with the other humans, biting her lip nervously. Commander Ravik stood with the adult Meralki, watching with intense interest. Begin, Silka announced. She had appointed herself as the judge. Daewon closed his eyes. He fell into his meditation easily. It was as natural to him as breathing. He focused on his breath. In, hold, out, in, hold, out. The crowd around him faded. The station faded. There was only breath, only calm, only the present moment. Tor closed his eyes and tried to copy Daewon's position. He straightened his back, placed his hands on his knees, started breathing slowly. For the first minute he felt good, confident. He could do this. By the second minute his muscles started aching. His legs wanted to move. His tail wanted to twitch. He forced them to stay still. By the fifth minute his ears were swiveling toward sounds without his permission. Someone coughed in the crowd. His right ear turned toward it. He forced it back. By the seventh minute sweat was forming under his fur. His breathing became uneven. He tried to control it, but his body would not cooperate. By the 10th minute his legs were cramping. His back hurt. His lungs felt like they were burning. How was Daewon doing this? The human sat perfectly still. His breathing never changed. He looked completely relaxed. Tor lasted 12 minutes. Then, with a gasp of frustration, he opened his eyes and fell forward, catching himself with his hands. His whole body trembled with effort. Daewon continued sitting. He had not moved, had not opened his eyes. He seemed unaware the challenge had ended. The human wins, Silka announced. Only then did Daewon open his eyes. He looked at Tor with concern. Are you okay? Tor was breathing hard. His pride was hurt worse than his body. He had lost badly in front of everyone, but he had also learned something important. Whatever Daewon was doing, it was real. It was difficult, and it was far beyond Tor's current ability. How? Tor asked. How do you do that? Daewon stood slowly. He stretched his legs. Practice. A lot of practice. And breathing techniques. Will you teach us? Tor asked. The question came out before he could stop it. The formal question he and Silka had planned. But now it was genuine. He really wanted to know. The cafeteria went completely silent. A cub asking a human to teach him something. This was unprecedented. Daewon looked around at all the watching faces. Human and Meralki. He saw curiosity, judgment, interest, fear. This was a moment that could go very wrong or very right. I can teach you, Daewon said carefully. But you need to understand something first. What I do is not combat training. It is not a warrior technique. It is meditation, a practice for mental peace and emotional control. But the silent hunter stance, Tor protested. The breathing, the awareness. There is no silent hunter stance, Daewon said gently. I just sit quietly and breathe. That is all. I do it because I have trouble with stress and bad memories. It helps me feel calm. There is nothing mystical about it. Nothing combative. The cubs looked at each other in confusion. Silka stepped forward. But your perfect stillness, your controlled breathing, your awareness while appearing unaware, those are all signs of advanced training. No, Daewon said. Those are all signs of practice, of doing the same thing every day until it becomes natural. Anyone can learn it. Human Meralki, anyone. But it is not about fighting. It is about not fighting. About finding peace inside yourself. Ven pushed through the crowd. Then why did you not react when Silka spilled water on you? A warrior evaluates threats and responds. You did neither. I did not react because it was water, Daewon explained. Not a threat. Just an accident. Why would I react to an accident? Because a trained warrior always reacts, Ven insisted. No, Daewon said firmly. A trained warrior reacts when necessary. A wise warrior knows the difference between danger and accidents, between threats and daily life. Meditation teaches you to see things as they are, not as you fear they might be. The crowd murmured. This was not what anyone had expected. The cubs looked disappointed, confused. Some looked betrayed, as if Daewon had tricked them. But Commander Ravik stepped forward. His voice cut through the murmuring. You say this practice gives you peace, inner calm, control over stress and fear. Yes, Daewon confirmed, and anyone can learn it. Yes, it just takes time and practice. Ravik looked at the assembled Meralki, especially the cubs. Then he looked back at Daewon. I have fought in hundreds of battles across many worlds. I have seen warriors freeze in fear. I have seen soldiers break under pressure. I have seen commanders make terrible decisions because they could not control their emotions. He paused, letting his words sink in. The observation deck had never been so crowded. Day 1 arrived early the next morning to find 20 Moralki already waiting. Cubs mostly, but also a few adults. Commander Ravik stood near the back, arms crossed, watching silently. On the human side, about 10 crew members had shown up. Some were curious. Others just wanted to support Day 1. Hana was there, of course, with a tablet ready to document everything for her research. "Good morning," Day 1 said, slightly overwhelmed by the turnout. "I am glad so many of you came, but I need to be honest before we start. Meditation is not exciting. It is not dramatic. It is just sitting and breathing. Many of you will find it boring. Some will find it frustrating. That is normal. We understand," Silka said. She sat in the front with Tor and Ven. All three looked determined. "Okay then," Day 1 said. "Find a comfortable spot on the floor. Sit cross-legged if you can. If that hurts, sit however feels stable and balanced." Everyone settled into position. The Moralki struggled more than the humans. Their leg structure was different. Their tails got in the way. There was some shuffling and complaining, but eventually everyone was seated. "Close your eyes," Day 1 instructed. "Focus on your breathing. Breathe in slowly through your nose. Count to 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out through your mouth for 4. That is 1 cycle. Just keep doing that." The room went quiet except for the sound of breathing. For about 30 seconds it was peaceful. Then the fidgeting started. Tor's ear twitched. Ven shifted his weight. A young Moralki named Heijin opened one eye to peek at the others. An adult warrior's tail swished in annoyance. Day 1, eyes still closed, spoke calmly. "It is okay if your body wants to move. Notice the urge. Do not fight it. Just notice it and return to your breath. In, hold, out." They tried. They really did. But by the 5-minute mark, half the Moralki had given up. They sat with their eyes open, looking frustrated. The humans were doing better, but even they were struggling. Only Ravik remained perfectly still. His eyes were closed. His breathing was controlled. Of all the Moralki, he seemed to understand the practice instinctively. Day 1 opened his eyes after 15 minutes. "That is enough for the first session. How does everyone feel?" "Frustrated," Silka admitted. "My mind would not stay quiet. I kept thinking about other things." "That is normal," Day 1 assured her. "The mind is like that. It wanders. Meditation is not about stopping thoughts. It is about noticing when you get distracted and gently returning to your breath. Every time you notice and return, you are succeeding." "It felt like failing," Ven grumbled. "That is the hardest part to understand," Day 1 said. "There is no failing in meditation. There is only practice." They continued these sessions every morning. At first the numbers dropped. Many Moralki gave up after a few days. It was too boring, too difficult, too unlike what they expected. But a core group remained. Silka, Tor, Ven, and about 6 other cubs. Ravik never missed a session. A few adult Moralki continued as well, drawn by Ravik's example, and the human participants stayed consistent, enjoying the structured practice. By the second week, Day 1 noticed changes. The cubs were calmer. They walked the corridors with less aggression. The constant territorial posturing had decreased. They still challenged each other, as was their nature, but with less hostility. Tor showed the most improvement. He told Day 1 privately that meditation helped him sleep better. His thoughts were less chaotic. He felt more focused during his warrior training. "I thought peace and warrior training were opposites," Tor said, "but they are not. The meditation makes me better at combat because I can think more clearly." "That is exactly right," Day 1 said. "A calm mind sees opportunities a stressed mind misses." Ravik approached Day 1 after a session in the 3rd week. "I need to speak with you privately." They walked to a quiet corner of the observation deck. Ravik looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for the confident warrior. "I owe you an apology," Ravik said. "When the cubs first reported your meditation, I thought you were practicing combat techniques. I researched human military history. I became convinced you were a hidden threat." Day 1 listened quietly. "I was seeing what I expected to see," Ravik continued. "I expected humans to be deceptive, to hide their true nature, so when I saw something I did not understand, I assumed danger. That was foolish. It was natural," Day 1 said. "We all do that. We see the world through our experiences. Your experiences taught you to be cautious. But your meditation is teaching me something my experiences did not," Ravik said. It is teaching me to see things as they are, not as I fear they might be. That is a valuable lesson for an old warrior. You are a good student, Day One said. You have better discipline than most. Years of military training, Ravik said with a slight smile. But your practice is different. It is not about controlling the body. It is about understanding the mind. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm, a loud blaring sound that echoed through the station. Red lights flashed. Day One's military training kicked in immediately. What is that? Breach alarm, Ravik said, already moving. Section C, that is near the airlocks. They ran toward Section C. Other crew members were doing the same, Human and Moralki, all responding to the emergency. When they arrived, they found chaos. A maintenance error had caused an airlock seal to fail. The outer door was holding, but the inner door was damaged. Air was leaking slowly into space. If the outer door failed, everyone in Section C would be vented into the void. Worse, the emergency bulkhead doors had malfunctioned. They would not close. 12 people were trapped in Section C. 4 humans, 8 Moralki. Including Silka, Tor, and Ven, panic was setting in. The cubs were roaring in fear. 2 of the humans were frozen against the wall. Even the adult Moralki looked uncertain. The station's engineering team was working on the bulkhead doors from the outside, but it would take at least 10 minutes to override the malfunction. The leak was getting worse. They might not have 10 minutes. Day One looked into Section C through the observation window. He saw the fear, the chaos. Someone needed to take control in there. Someone needed to keep everyone calm while the repairs were made. Without hesitation, he opened the emergency access panel and entered Section C. Day One, no, Hana shouted from the corridor. You will be trapped too. But he was already inside. The door sealed behind him. He was now trapped with the others. The trapped crew members turned to look at him. Their eyes were wide with fear. The hissing of escaping air was getting louder. Everyone, listen to me, Day One said. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had been in dangerous situations before. We are going to be okay. The engineering team is working on the doors. We just need to stay calm and conserve air. The outer door could fail any second, one of the adult Moralki shouted. Her voice was full of panic. It could, Day One agreed, or it could hold. We do not know. What we do know is that panicking uses more oxygen and does not help. So we are going to sit down, breathe slowly, and wait. He sat down right there on the floor, cross-legged, hands on his knees. He closed his eyes and began his breathing practice, in, hold, out. The others stared at him. Meditate now, while they might all die, but something about his calm affected them. Silka sat down first, then Tor, then Ven. They copied his position. They started breathing with him. One by one, the others sat. Humans and Moralki, forming a circle in the middle of Section C, all breathing together, slow, controlled, calm. The hissing of air continued. The red lights continued flashing, but the panic subsided. The chaotic energy transformed into focused breathing. Day One kept his eyes closed, but he spoke quietly. Breathe with me. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Think only about your breath. Nothing else matters right now except this moment. This breath, they followed, some better than others. The cubs had practiced this for weeks now. They knew how. The adults who had attended meditation sessions found their training. Even those who had never meditated before found that copying the others helped. Time passed. It felt like forever. It was actually 7 minutes. Outside, Hana watched through the observation window. She had never been more terrified. Day One was in there, her friend, and he might die. But she could see what he was doing. He was keeping them calm. He was using meditation not as a combat technique, but as a survival tool. Ravik stood beside her. He is a warrior, after all, Ravik said quietly. Not the kind who fights with weapons, but the kind who fights fear with courage. The engineering team worked frantically. They bypassed the malfunction. The bulkhead doors groaned as the override kicked in. Slowly, they began to close. Inside Section C, Day One heard the doors moving. He did not open his eyes. He did not change his breathing. Keep breathing, he said. The doors are closing. We are almost safe. Keep breathing. The bulkhead doors sealed shut. Emergency systems kicked in. The air leak stopped. Fresh oxygen began pumping into Section C. They were safe. Only then did Daewon open his eyes. He looked around at the others. "Is everyone okay?" They nodded. Some were crying. Some were laughing with relief. Silka was shaking. Tor looked like he might be sick. But they were all alive. The inner access door opened. Medical teams rushed in to check everyone. Hana ran straight to Daewon and hugged him hard. "You idiot," she said, her voice breaking. "You could have died." 2 months after the airlock incident, Unity Horizon had changed. The changes were subtle but profound. The tension between humans and Meralki had not disappeared completely, but it had transformed into something healthier. Competition instead of hostility. Curiosity instead of suspicion. The morning meditation sessions had become a station tradition. What started with 20 participants had grown to 50. Cubs, adult warriors, human crew members, even some of the science staff who had initially mocked the practice. Every morning, the observation deck filled with beings sitting quietly, breathing together. Daewon no longer led every session. He had trained others. Ravik led sessions twice a week. Silka had become surprisingly good at teaching the younger cubs. Even Hana led a session focused on meditation for stress relief, specific to scientists working in high-pressure situations. The cubs had changed the most. They were still young warriors in training. They still challenged each other. They still competed. But they did it with more control, less anger. They thought before acting. They breathed before reacting. Silka told Daewon that her combat scores had improved by 20% since starting meditation. "My instructors do not understand why," she said. "They think I grew stronger. But I did not. I just learned to think more clearly during fights." Tor had stopped having nightmares. He had been having them for years, dreams of failing his warrior trials, of bringing shame to his family. The meditation helped him process those fears. "I still worry," he told Daewon, "but the worry does not control me anymore." Ven, who had been the most skeptical, had become one of the practice's biggest advocates. He taught meditation to new cubs arriving at the station. "I tell them what you told us," Ven said. "That sitting still is harder than fighting. They never believe me until they try." Everything seemed peaceful, better than it had been. Then the pirates came. The attack happened without warning. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the station's sensor range. They were not large ships, but they were heavily armed. Raiders who targeted isolated stations, stealing research data and valuable equipment. Unity Horizon was an easy target. It was a peaceful research station. Its weapons were minimal. Its shields were designed for asteroid debris, not military attacks. The alarm sounded. Commander Ravik immediately took charge of the Meralki defense teams. A human named Jinsu, the station's security chief, coordinated the human response. They had drills for this. Everyone had roles. But no one had expected it to actually happen. "All non-combat personnel to emergency shelters," Jinsu's voice echoed through the station intercom. "Defense teams to stations. This is not a drill." The pirates sent a message, simple and brutal. "Surrender your research data and valuable cargo. You have 10 minutes. If you resist, we will vent your atmosphere and take what we want from your corpses." In the command center, Ravik and Jinsu faced each other across the tactical display. They had worked together for months, but this was different. This was real. "We cannot win a straight fight," Jinsu said. She pulled up tactical information. 3 raider ships against our minimal defenses. "We can maybe hold them off for 20 minutes. Then they board us." "We must try," Ravik said. His warrior instincts demanded action. "We cannot surrender without fighting." "I am not suggesting surrender," Jinsu said. "I am suggesting we fight smart, not hard." Ravik looked at her. "Explain." "Their ships are faster than ours, but our station has better sensors. We can track them precisely. If we coordinate our limited weapons with defensive maneuvers, we can hold them off longer, long enough for the distress signal to reach the nearest military outpost. That could take an hour, maybe more. Then we need to hold for an hour." Day 1 arrived at the command center. He was not military. He was not security. But Jinsu had called him because she needed someone who could keep people calm while the fighting happened. "The cubs," Day 1 said immediately. "They are in the training section. Someone needs to get them to shelters." "Already sent someone," Jinsu confirmed. She looked stressed. Her hands were shaking slightly as she worked the controls. Day 1 noticed. He stepped beside her. "Breathe," he said quietly. 4 counts. You know how. Jinsu took a breath. Steadier this time. Right, thanks. The pirate ships began their attack run. The station shook as weapons fire hit the shields. Red lights flashed. Damage reports came in. Shields holding at 70%, a technician reported. Return fire, Ravik ordered. Target their engines. The station's few weapons fired. Not enough to destroy the pirate ships, but enough to make them wary. The pirates pulled back, circling to find weak points in the station's defenses. They are testing us, Jinsu said, seeing how we respond. When they find our weak point, they will focus fire there. Then we do not show them our weak point, Ravik said. He studied the tactical display. We rotate the station. Keep moving. They have to chase our defenses. That will use a lot of power, the technician warned. Do it, Jinsu ordered. The station began rotating slowly on its axis. The pirates adapted, splitting up to attack from multiple angles. One ship focused on weapons, keeping the defenders busy. The other 2 looked for entry points to board the station. In the training section, the cubs were supposed to be heading to shelters. But Silka, Tor, and Ven had stopped. They heard the weapons fire. They felt the station shake. Their warrior instinct screamed at them to fight, not hide. We should help, Silka said. We are cubs, Tor reminded her. We are not full warriors yet. We should do what we are told. We are trained, Ven argued. We know combat. And there are only a few adult warriors on the station. They need everyone, Silka made a decision. We help, but not by fighting. We help by keeping others calm. Like Daewon taught us, they split up. Each took a different shelter, helping to organize the frightened crew members inside. When people panicked, the cubs led breathing exercises. When children cried, they told them stories. When adults argued about what to do, the cubs reminded them to trust the defense teams. It was not glory. It was not combat. But it was important. In the command center, the battle continued. The pirates were getting more aggressive. They had found a weak point in Section E, far from the main defense weapons. 2 ships focused fire there, while the 3rd kept the station's guns busy. Shields in Section E down to 30%, the technician reported. They will breach in 5 minutes. Can we move weapons to cover that area? Ravik asked. Not fast enough, Jinsu said. She was breathing carefully, staying calm, thinking clearly. We need another option. Daewon studied the tactical display. He was not military, but he had been once. Years ago, and he still remembered how to think tactically. The pirates want our research data. That is valuable. Can we use that? How? Jinsu asked. Offer them something. Not the real data, but something that looks real. If we transmit a fake data package to one of their ships, they might pause the attack to verify it. That buys us time. Ravik considered this. Deception was acceptable in Meralki warfare. It could work, but they will know it is fake within minutes. Minutes are what we need, Daewon said. Every minute we survive is a minute closer to rescue. Jinsu made the call. The station transmitted a large data package to the nearest pirate ship, along with a message. First payment, cease fire and we will transmit the rest. The pirates stopped shooting. Their ships held position while they analyzed the data. It would not take long for them to realize it was nonsense dressed up to look valuable, but it bought precious time. Shields recharging, the technician reported. Section E back up to 50%. How long until rescue arrives? Ravik asked. 42 minutes, Jinsu said. And how long until the pirates realize the data is fake? 5 minutes, maybe less. Then we prepare for them to board us, Ravik said. He activated station-wide communication. All defense teams prepare for boarding actions. They will likely target the research labs and data centers, fortify those positions. Meralki warriors moved through the corridors, setting up defensive positions. Human security teams joined them. For months they had trained together. Now that training would be tested, the pirates figured out the deception in 4 minutes. Their ships resumed the attack with increased fury. They were angry now. More dangerous, they are firing everything, the technician said. Shields cannot hold. How long? Jinsu asked. 2 minutes. Maybe 3, Ravik growled in frustration. He wanted to be out there fighting, not stuck in a command center watching displays. But he forced himself to stay calm, to breathe, to think. That was what meditation had taught him. We still have escape pods, Ravik said. If they breach, we evacuate non-essential personnel. That leaves the defenders outnumbered, Jinsu argued. But it saves lives. Ravik countered. We can defend the station with fewer people. We cannot defend it if we are protecting frightened civilians at the same time. Jinsu nodded. It was the right tactical decision. She activated the evacuation protocol for non-essential personnel. In the shelters, people began moving toward the escape pod bays. Orderly, calm. The Cubs helped organize them. No one panicked because panic would waste time and get people killed. Daewon stayed in the command center. He was non-essential, but Jinsu needed him there. His calm was contagious. When the technicians started panicking,